Tara Scott eagerly introduced her husband and best friend to her newfound favorite coffee spot, believing neither had visited before. She looked forward to sharing her Saturday morning with them. However, upon entering, Tara noticed a barista staring at her. Despite her attempts to brush it off, her anticipation dissolved into distress when she discovered a note that shattered her happiness. That morning, Tara eagerly anticipated her coffee outing with both her husband and best friend Clara at the new cafe she couldn't stop raving about. She had arranged for Clara to join them, and promptly at 8 a.m., Tara and Luke set off from home. "Where exactly is this place?" Luke inquired from the driver's seat, his tone shifting slightly upon hearing the location Tara mentioned. "It's that new cafe beside your gym," Tara mentioned casually, yet her husband's demeanor shifted abruptly. His face paled as he turned to her, bewildered. "Wait, what?" he stammered, clearly taken aback. Tara found his reaction odd, but initially dismissed it. Could he simply be uninterested in going? As she observed him further, Tara couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. "Why are you so taken aback?" She chuckled, puzzled by her husband's sudden change in mood. He quickly brushed it off. Luke smiled, casting a glance at his wife. "Oh, I simply hadn't realized there was a new cafe nearby. Caught me off guard," he explained casually. Tara nodded, accepting his explanation without further inquiry, steering the conversation elsewhere as they drove together to the quaint cafe, a mere 10-minute journey away. As they halted on the street by the cafe, Tara immediately noticed Clara leaning against her car. With a wave, Tara walked over to greet her. Luke, however, appeared more reserved than usual as he emerged from the driver's seat, exchanging awkward pleasantries with Clara. There was an uncharacteristic tenseness about him that Tara couldn't quite ignore. Deciding not to dwell on Luke's demeanor, Tara smoothly guided them towards the cafe's entrance. Yet, upon entering, Tara's keen eye immediately caught something amiss. As they entered, Tara couldn't help but notice the woman behind the counter fixated on Luke. Her gaze lingered on him, not sparing Tara a glance. It struck Tara as odd, but she brushed it off, choosing not to dwell on the peculiar behavior. Acknowledging Luke's appeal, Tara understood why someone might stare. They efficiently ordered their drinks and settled into a nearby seat, dismissing the incident from their minds. As they gathered at the table, reflecting on the hectic week they had just endured, Tara couldn't shake the feeling that her husband's attention was elsewhere. His eyes frequently drifted towards the counter behind her, where the barista had been moments before. It was unsettling, and Tara found herself growing uneasy. Soon their coffees arrived, interrupting the uneasy silence. It was then that Tara noticed something that shattered her heart. A poignant note scribbled on her husband's coffee cup, revealing a hidden exchange that had transpired unbeknownst to her. Tara and Luke Scott's relationship began during their college years in Indianapolis, Indiana. Luke was dedicated to his engineering studies, embodying a hard-working and ambitious spirit. In contrast, Tara pursued languages and often found herself lost in daydreams. Despite their differences, their connection was strong and harmonious. Luke admired Tara's imaginative nature, finding her ability to see beyond the practicalities of life endearing. Their complementary personalities fostered a deep bond that thrived on mutual respect and understanding, making their journey from college sweethearts to life partners a natural progression filled with admiration and affection. The day they exchanged vows marked a pinnacle in their lives, filled with hope and excitement for the future ahead. Moving into their dream home in the suburbs, they meticulously adorned it according to their shared vision, cherishing each step of their journey together. Initially, Tara pursued her career, contributing her efforts until her husband's significant career advancement. Recognizing their evolving circumstances, he supported her decision to transition away from work, embracing their mutual growth and new chapter in life. Tara had long harbored a dream of being a homemaker, dedicating her days to cooking and maintaining their home, a vision Luke earnestly supported. Their initial years together epitomized harmony and companionship, sharing a bond as best friends and allies in all ventures. However, as they entered their 30s, a subtle yet profound shift occurred. Luke began to exhibit signs of emotional distance, altering the dynamic that had defined their relationship for so long. At first, the changes in his behavior were subtle. He would go to bed earlier than usual, or spend an extra hour at the gym. It was so subtle that Tara had no idea something was wrong. She went about her time, unaware that her husband was changing before her eyes. But just a few weeks after these changes began occurring, something worrying started happening, and Tara finally noticed. Luke had always been rather strict about keeping his work and home lives separate. Although he had an office at home, he never really used it. But then, suddenly, something changed. He would come home from work, eat dinner, and then lock himself in his office for hours. Some nights he would only come to bed once his wife was fast asleep. But unfortunately for Tara, it didn't stop there. From that point forward, her husband seemed to grow more distant by the day. At first, he was snappy and easily agitated, but it got to the point where he held a stern frown wherever he went. Long gone were the days when they would speak for hours on end. Tara would try to have friendly conversations with him, but he would always appear disinterested or annoyed when she would try to talk to him. It became difficult for her to deal with alone, so she decided to invite her best friend Clara over for coffee one afternoon. Clara showed up at 1 p.m., and Luke wouldn't be home for a few more hours. Tara just needed someone to talk to. She prepared a nice pot of coffee before the two of them headed to the living room, where they could sit comfortably and talk. As soon as Clara sat down beside her with a worried look on her face, she asked Tara what was going on. "I can tell that something is wrong. Did he do or say something?" Clara asked, already somehow knowing that Luke was the problem. Tara tried to hold it together, but as soon as her friend asked that question, the tears began pouring. Just then, she realized how tough it had been on her. "Something has changed. I can feel it. He's drifting away, and I feel like there is nothing I can do to stop him," Tara said. "We've barely really spoken in weeks, and he is spending all of his time in his office, refusing to come out. What if he's going to leave me?" she cried. But Clara quickly pulled her in for a hug, rubbing her back supportively as she heard the genuine pain behind her friend's voice. "Has something happened? Did the two of you have some kind of fight?" Clara asked, trying to understand why he would just change like that. But Tara shook her head. "No, everything was fine. And when I looked away, things had changed." "I'm losing my mind," she sniffed. "I've been sitting in this house for weeks, wondering what I'm supposed to do to fix this," she shrugged. But Clara had another question. "Have you spoken to him about it?" she asked, but Tara shook her head. "You should. It's the only way to find out what's bothering him." Tara agreed. "I know. It's just been so hard. I've wanted to ask him, but I keep getting scared that he'll say something I don't want to hear," she explained. "I know it's hard, but talk to him. Maybe it won't be as bad as you expect it to be," she said with a kind smile. But she had one more suggestion. "As for sitting at home all day, worrying about this, I want you to find a nice little spot you can go to whenever you feel this way. It can be a cafe or a bar, whatever you want, but you need to get out of the house more. It will be healthy for you," Clara said. Tara knew she was right. "I will speak to him tonight, and in the morning I will look online and find a nice place to distress," she said, trying to smile. That was exactly what she did. That night, when her husband got home, She stopped him before he could disappear into his office. "I just want to know if you're okay. You've been so distant lately, and I'm worried that I've done something to upset you," she said. Her heart was pounding in her chest, but she tried her best to remain strong and talk the matter out with her husband. But he seemed confused by his question, almost like he hadn't noticed any changes in his own behavior. "Oh no, honey, you did nothing wrong," he said, sounding unsure. "I guess I'm just a little stressed with work at the moment." Although Tara was unsure of what he had said, she decided to take his word for it. Maybe he was just distant because of stress. That night, in an attempt to distract herself from her husband, she looked up a few cafes around town and eventually found something nice. Based on the photos, it seemed to be cozy and rather quiet. She could grab a coffee and perhaps read a book for a few hours there. She decided to take her friend's advice and went to the little cafe the very next morning. To her surprise, it was right by her husband's gym. That morning, as she walked into the cafe, she spotted a young blonde woman behind the counter with a friendly smile. "Could I just get a tall cappuccino?" Tara requested, with a friendly smile, unaware of the secrets this woman would eventually reveal. With a coffee in hand, she took a seat in the back corner of the cafe and read one of her favorite books for books on end. The hours passed without Tara even noticing. Never before had she felt so relaxed and at ease than at that cafe. It wasn't until her phone rang that she was snapped back to reality. She quickly grabbed it, seeing Clara's name on the screen. "Hey, I just wanted to see how you were feeling today," Clara said. She had always been the sweetest, most caring woman in the world. "I am amazing," Tara responded, unable to suppress the smile that tugged at the corners of her lips. She decided to tell Clara everything that had happened. "He said everything is fine, but I just found this amazing cafe close to his gym, and the coffee is to die for. I need to bring you and Luke here," she insisted. "Well, I am available this weekend if you and Luke want to go for a little coffee run," Clara suggested. But Tara had no idea what she was getting herself into. That evening, as Tara's husband settled in after work, she suggested the coffee date with Clara that upcoming weekend. To her surprise, he smiled and agreed. "Where do you guys want to go for coffee?" he asked sincerely, eager to hear her choice. "It's a surprise. I visited it today and loved it. I'm going back tomorrow, and I think you'll love it too," she replied, winking mischievously. Little did she know, it wasn't just the coffee that was brewing. Luke didn't ask any further questions, excepting that she wanted it to be a surprise. As Tara finished preparing dinner, her mind wandered back to the cafe. There was something special about that place, a comfort she couldn't quite explain. Meanwhile, Luke seemed unusually attentive, helping set the table and asking about her day with genuine interest. It felt like the old times, and, for a moment, Tara wondered if this new routine could be the secret to rekindling their spark. But there was more to the cafe than she realized. The remainder of the week continued as usual. Tara went to the cafe every single day, reading her book and drinking countless cups of coffee. The cozy atmosphere, the hum of quiet conversations, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee made her feel at peace, a stark contrast to the tension she often felt at home. The cafe became her refuge, a place where she could forget about the house, her husband, and the mounting stress. She truly got to relax, letting her worries melt away with each sip of her favorite brew. During that time, she could tell that Luke was trying to make a conscious effort to be more involved whenever he was home. His increased presence at home brought a fleeting sense of hope and normalcy back into their lives. He would still spend an extra hour at the gym every day, but she assumed he had just started some new routine. Overall, life seemed to look up during that week, but it was that Saturday morning that everything came crashing down around her, shattering the fragile peace they had briefly found. That morning, everything seemed right in the world. Clara and Luke had always gotten along, and she looked forward to their time together. It was a beautiful day, the sun shining brightly and casting a golden hue over the neighborhood as they left their home just after 8 a.m., ready for a nice time out. Clara had agreed to meet them at the cafe. Tara couldn't wait to introduce her husband to her new favorite spot, unaware of the turmoil that awaited them there. But as soon as they got into the car, and Tara told Luke where they were going, his face fell. Suddenly, he seemed worried, his brow furrowing as he focused on the road. Tara noticed his unease, a pang of concern tugging at her. She wondered if something about the cafe had triggered his reaction, or if it was something else entirely. Luke's usually relaxed demeanor now appeared tense, and Tara hesitated, unsure whether to press him for an explanation or to let the moment pass in silence. "Why do you seem so surprised?" she finally asked, confused by her husband's shift in demeanor. But he shook it off. Luke smiled as he glanced at his wife. "Oh, I just haven't noticed a new cafe in the area." "I was a little confused," he said, his voice casual but his eyes avoiding hers. Tara sensed some unease but pushed it aside, wanting to enjoy their outing. She accepted his answer and changed the topic as they continued driving. She chattered about inconsequential things, trying to distract herself from the nagging feeling that something was amiss. As they pulled up to the cafe, Tara couldn't shake the tension that had settled between them since leaving home. The quaint little spot seemed oblivious to the turmoil inside the car. Luke parked the car in silence, and Tara noticed that his hands gripped the steering wheel a little tighter than usual. She searched his expression, but he kept his gaze fixed on the cafe's entrance. "Here we are," Tara said, trying to inject enthusiasm into her voice, though it felt strained. A knot of apprehension tightened in her stomach. As soon as she stepped out into the parking lot, Tara spotted Clara leaning against her car. She waved and approached them. Luke seemed stiffer than usual as he slid out of the driver's seat. His greeting to Clara seemed awkward, lacking the usual warmth and ease Tara had come to expect. There was an uncharacteristic tension in his posture, a subtle unease that Tara couldn't ignore, setting off a faint alarm in the back of her mind. Something about him just seemed weird. Tara decided not to bring too much attention to it, and quickly led them toward the entrance. Luke seemed lost in thought, his easygoing demeanor replaced by an anxiety that she couldn't quite decipher. As they walked, he kept glancing around, almost as if searching for something, or someone. Tara brushed it off, attributing it to his busy week, or perhaps his ongoing gym routine. She hoped the outing would help him unwind, unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface of their seemingly ordinary coffee outing. As soon as they stepped through the doors, she noticed the woman behind the counter staring directly at them. Her gaze was intense, fixed on with an unsettling focus that made Tara uneasy. But her eyes were not on Tara. Instead, they followed Luke's every move, lingering a beat too long on his face and posture. Tara found it bizarre but chose to brush it off, attributing it to harmless admiration. After all, she knew her husband was an attractive man, and it wasn't uncommon for others to notice. Tara, Luke, and Clara quickly ordered their drinks and found a cozy spot to sit. Tara hoped the waitress's gaze would fade once they settled in, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As they waited for their coffees, Tara's curiosity grew. What was the waitress's fascination with Luke? Was there more to it than mere admiration? The uncertainty ate at her, casting a shadow over what was supposed to be a relaxing coffee outing. She had no idea what the waitress was going to do next. As they settled in, Clara and Tara chatted away. Meanwhile, Luke held a menu up to his face, almost like he was trying to hide behind it. When Tara glanced at him, she noticed the thin layer of sweat above his upper lip. Was he nervous? She glanced around the room, trying to see who he could possibly be hiding from. But then she saw the barista, who was still staring at him. Tara realized that the woman couldn't take her eyes off Luke. Tara thought this was strange. Why was the woman still staring? And why was he seemingly trying to hide from her gaze? Her eyes flickered between Luke and the young barista, but she didn't say anything. She told herself that it was no big deal. "How was the week? Were you busy at work?" she asked Clara, hoping to shift her focus away from the unsettling thoughts. However, Tara's mind kept returning to the cafe and Luke's unusual behavior. Little did she know, the unraveling of her peaceful routine was just moments away. As they sat around a table, discussing the busy week that was now behind them, Tara couldn't help but notice her husband's wandering eyes. Every now and again, he would glance at the counter behind her, right where the barista from earlier stood. Luke seemed unusually preoccupied, his usual charm replaced by a distracted demeanor. She tried to engage him in the conversation, but his responses were brief, his attention drifting back to the counter. Tara wondered if there was a connection between Luke's behavior and the barista's lingering gaze. Then, just a minute later, their coffees were brought out to them by the same barista. "Here you go," she said, her eyes locked onto Luke's. Her smile was bright, revealing a set of pearly whites, and her movements were slow and deliberate as she bent down to leave the cup in front of him. Tara noticed the subtle, almost flirtatious way the barista lingered, her hand brushing Luke's ever so slightly. It was as if there was a silent exchange happening between them. The waitress placed Luke's cup down in front of him, and as she did, Tara spotted some kind of writing on the side. She reached for her own cup, trying to see if they all had writing on them. But they didn't. Had the barista written him a note? Tara grinned at the idea. She wondered if the barista was shooting her shot, unaware that they were married. Had she known better, she would have stopped the barista right there and then. "Looks like you have a secret admirer over there, honey," she told her husband. She tried not to laugh out loud as she motioned toward the barista. The woman was once again standing behind the counter, staring. Luke glanced at her for a second, frowning. "I'm sorry, that's really weird. Maybe we should go somewhere else," he suggested. But just then, Clara noticed something. Luke had no idea that his wife's friend was watching him from behind. From where Clara was sitting, she could see his cup a little better than Tara. She had a look of concern plastered across her face. Her eyes slowly trailed toward Tara, staring at her like she was trying to tell her something with just her eyes alone. Tara was confused, until her friend motioned toward the cup. Luke noticed the exchange, his eyes growing wide when he realized what she had seen. The ladies were on to him. Suddenly, an overwhelming feeling washed over Tara. She couldn't help but feel like something was seriously wrong. Her husband was hiding something from her. She could feel it in her bones. Without asking, she reached for his cup. He didn't even try to stop her as she turned the cup around and read the terrible words. Her husband knew he couldn't hide it any longer. He was caught red-handed. Tears burned behind her eyes as she stared at the words scrawled on the coffee cup. "Hi, baby. I missed you," the words read, mocking her. She saw red. "Do you know that woman?" she asked, trying to process what was happening. She blinked back her tears, trying to focus on Luke's face, searching for any sign of denial or guilt. Deep down, she had a bad feeling, but she desperately hoped it wasn't real. Her world spun as she awaited Luke's response, her heart pounding in her chest. "Luke, are you having an affair?" she asked quietly, watching his face twist in despair. He couldn't hide it any longer. Guilt weighed heavily on his features, betraying the truth before he could muster a reply. The air grew thick with unspoken accusations as Tara's heart raced with disbelief and hurt. She had suspected something amiss, but confronting it head-on shattered any hope of denial. Luke's silence confirmed her worst fears, casting their once idyllic marriage into a whirlwind of betrayal and shattered trust. Luke was caught out. "I am so sorry," he said in a voice just above a whisper. Clara gasped and covered her mouth with her hand. Tears sprung from Tara's eyes as she stared at her husband in bewilderment. How on earth could something like this happen? She needed the answers immediately. "I need you to tell me the truth. What is going on here?" she asked, her heart breaking. The innocent wife had no idea what her husband did behind her back. Luke sighed heavily as tears welled up behind his own eyes, the weight of guilt and sorrow bearing down on him. He looked at Tara, knowing that he was about to shatter her world. He couldn't believe that this would be how she learned the truth about his betrayal. Not wanting to inflict any more pain than he already had, Luke steeled himself and began to tell her the truth, his heart breaking with every word he spoke. "I met her at the gym, and we just hit it off. One thing led to another, and we started seeing each other. Then I learned that she worked here," Luke confessed, his voice heavy with regret. Tara stared at him, her eyes wide in shock. Her world was crashing down around her as the truth sank in. The cafe's once cozy atmosphere now felt suffocatingly tense. Luke's betrayal had shattered Tara's trust in an instant. She struggled to process the enormity of what he had done, grappling with disbelief and heartbreak as her marriage unraveled before her eyes. Shame was written across his face as he stared at the woman whose heart he had just broken into millions of pieces. She couldn't believe it. Was that why he had been acting strange for so long? Was that why he spent an extra hour at the gym? She couldn't take it. She pushed her chair out, and so did Clara. They stormed out, leaving him sitting alone in that coffee shop. In the blink of an eye, their affair was exposed in public. The humiliated wife was in tears. "Please, can I go home with you?" Tara's voice trembled as she turned to her best friend, seeking solace from the betrayal that had shattered her world. Without hesitation, Clara nodded, her heart aching for Tara's pain. They got into her car and sped off. As they left, Tara noticed her husband in the rearview mirror, watching as they drove away. His expression was a mix of regret and pleading, but Tara looked away, unable to bear the sight of the man who had broken her heart so callously. That evening, Luke called her again and again, but she didn't answer. He sent many texts, asking her if they could talk and work through it, but she didn't respond. Each notification felt like a stab of betrayal replaying in her mind. She stared at the screen, tears streaming down her face, feeling the weight of his pleas and apologies. His persistent attempts to reach out only amplified her pain, reminding her of the shattered trust and the life they once shared. It was all his fault, and she couldn't bear to confront him, not yet. She had always told him that if he ever cheated, she would walk out on him in the blink of an eye. She was going to stick to that. She stayed with Clara, and when Monday rolled around, she filed for divorce. Luke begged her not to, but it was too late. She wanted nothing more to do with the man who would do something like that to her. She could never forgive him. But it was going to be an ugly divorce. She had more money than he did. Clara stood by Tara's side throughout the divorce, lending a shoulder to cry on, and a bed to sleep in. She was her only support. Tara was grateful for her best friend, and she hoped to never lose her. In the end, the divorce was settled, and it was time to move on. Although her heart was still broken, she knew that someday she would be able to move on and be with the right person for her. But for now, she had to deal with two cheaters trying to apologize. Luke sat alone in his small, sparsely furnished apartment, the only sound the ticking of the clock on the wall. The apartment, much smaller than the house he had shared with Tara, felt like a prison. The walls seemed to close in on him as he remembered the look of betrayal in Tara's eyes when she found out. He stared blankly at the empty bottles of beer scattered around him, a testament to his failed attempts to drown out the misery that had become his constant companion. Tara was gone. The divorce had been finalized last week, leaving Luke with nothing but regret and a hollow ache where his heart used to be. The sad ex-husband stared at the cracked ceiling. The past few months had been a whirlwind of regret and sorrow. His divorce left an emptiness that gnawed at him relentlessly. His mistake, the affair with a waitress named Jenna, had cost him everything he held dear. Tara was gone, and his job as a marketing executive had slipped through his fingers. He was stuck, and his bank balance was steadily depleting. The legal fees had cost him an arm and a leg, and it would take months for him to recover financially. He had made a colossal mistake, one that he replayed over and over in his mind. Cheating on Tara with a waitress named Jenna was the worst decision of his life. At the time, he had convinced himself it was a fleeting escape from the stresses of marriage and work. Now, he saw it for what it was. A moment of weakness that had cost him everything. Luke could kick himself. "Why did I do it?" he muttered to himself, his voice breaking the silence. "What was I thinking?" She had given him a chance to come clean, to make amends, but he had been too cowardly to admit the truth. By the time he finally confessed, it was too late. Luke's job had been the next casualty. As a marketing manager at a reputable firm, he had once taken pride in his work. But after the affair became public knowledge, his colleagues looked at him differently. The respect he had earned over the years vanished, replaced by whispers and judgmental glances. Eventually, his performance suffered, and he was let go. With no job and no family to turn to, Luke felt completely adrift. He tried calling Jenna, hoping to find some semblance of comfort in her company, but she wanted nothing to do with him. Their brief fling had ended as abruptly as it had started, leaving him feeling even more isolated. "Hey, Jenna, it's Luke," he had said nervously when she answered the phone. "Can we talk?" "Luke, I told you it was a mistake. I don't want to see you again," she replied curtly before hanging up. Luke threw the phone across the room in frustration, watching as it bounced off the wall and landed on the floor with a thud. He buried his face in his hands, feeling the weight of his mistakes pressing down on him. Days turned into weeks, and Luke struggled to find a new job. He sent out countless resumes and attended interviews, but nothing seemed to pan out. His confidence, once a defining trait, was shattered. Each rejection felt like another nail in the coffin of his old life. He tried to contact his old friends, but everybody had moved on and didn't have time for him anymore. He was on his own now, and he had no clue where life was going to take him. One evening, Luke decided to visit a local bar, hoping the change of scenery might help him forget his troubles, if only for a little while. The bar was dimly lit, with a few patrons scattered around, nursing their drinks. He ordered a whiskey and took a seat at the corner, trying to blend into the shadows. He overheard some men talking about a new mall opening just outside town. He moved to a smaller place out of town. Now, he was reduced to working as a waiter at a small diner just to scrape by. The irony of working in the same industry where his downfall began was not lost on him. He laughed when he got the job. Each day at the diner felt like an eternity. The constant clatter of dishes and the endless stream of orders was a far cry from the bustling office environment he once thrived in. But Luke knew he had no one to blame but himself. Jenna, the waitress he had cheated with, had made it clear she wanted nothing more to do with him, but he kept begging her to date him. He lost her too. One particularly slow afternoon, Luke was wiping down tables when the doorbell chimed, signaling a new customer. He glanced up and felt his heart stop. It was her scent that he picked up on first. His ex-wife, Tara, walked in, looking radiant and composed. She was not alone. A tall, handsome man with an easy smile was by her side, his arm draped casually over her shoulder. He knew then that Tara had moved on. Tara's eyes widened in shock when she saw Luke. For a moment, neither of them moved. Luke's heart sank further as he noticed the glint of a diamond ring on her finger. The silence between them was deafening. Finally, Tara approached her expression a mix of surprise and pity. "Luke, what are you doing here?" she asked softly. Luke forced a smile, trying to hide the turmoil inside. "I work here," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just trying to make ends meet." The man beside Tara extended his hand with a polite smile. "Hi, I'm David, Tara's fiancé." Luke shook David's hand, feeling a pang of jealousy and regret. "Nice to meet you, David. Tara always deserved someone like you." David looked at Tara with a smile, then back at Luke. "Thanks, man. Life can be unexpected, huh?" Luke nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Yeah, it can be." Tara's gaze softened as she looked at Luke. "I'm really sorry, Luke. I didn't know things had gotten this bad for you." "It's okay," Luke lied. "I made my bed, and now I have to lie in it." The conversation was interrupted by a customer's call for service. Luke excused himself and went back to work, his mind a chaotic mess of emotions. Throughout the day, he couldn't shake the image of Tara and David, happy and in love. It was a stark reminder of what he had lost. As he served tables, Luke kept glancing at Tara. She seemed genuinely happy, her laughter ringing through the diner like a melody he could no longer enjoy. David was attentive, always making her smile. Luke felt like an outsider, peering into a life that was no longer his. He was the loser. When their meal was finished, Tara and David prepared to leave. Tara walked up to Luke one last time. "I hope things get better for you, Luke," she said, her voice filled with genuine concern. "Thanks, Tara," Luke replied, forcing another smile. "I hope you and David have a wonderful life together." Tara gave him a weak smile. Luke knew that she was just being nice. It was all his fault for cheating on her. Now he had to deal with it. As the door closed behind them, Luke felt a crushing sense of finality. Would he ever see her again? Tara had moved on, and he was left to pick up the pieces of his shattered life. His heart went cold as he realized that he would never, ever get Tara back. The regret was a constant weight on his shoulders, a reminder of the happiness he had thrown away. Now, he was the one who was at a loss. Days turned into weeks, and Luke tried to focus on his work. But the encounter with Tara had left a deep scar. Every time the diner door opened, he half expected to see her walk in again, but she never did. He threw himself into his job, hoping the routine would numb the pain. But Luke was about to get the surprise of his life when Clara walked into the restaurant. She wanted to tell him the truth about what happened in their throuple. It turned out that Luke was being played all along.